Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eirik Arnesen, welcome into my studio in Florence, Italy. Today we are forging on with our portrait sculpture of the Venerable Stefano. This is episode 3, so check out episode number 1 and 2 before diving into this one if you haven't already. Let's get into it. So turning form from one point in space to the profile makes sense to us. We have 2 points in space and we turn the volume gradually from one to the next. When dealing with internal information, the same thing occurs, of course, except now the point is placed by us internally inside the contours. In the case of the cheekbones, we have a form, the cheekbone, turning from its widest point at the contour to an end point internally inside the contour, here. We can tell the form turn ends here because we see a shadow indicating a transition between forms. There might be an argument to be made for the fact that there seems to be a very shallow transition right here, but I will ignore this shallow depression for now and indicate it later by lightly raking away a little bit of clay. We can get a little bit of a sense of how the form turns by observing from the 3/4 view. We can see how far forwards the cheekbone protrudes from this view, and this can give us some indication of what is going on. However, I would caution you against building a secondary contour from the 3/4 view, as it is a viewpoint that's very hard to return to accurately. And so the profile you build now might not be the profile you are looking at tomorrow. Which defies the concept of observing on equal terms, of course. From here, we can spot several things actually, like how the muscle form protrudes far enough forwards to cover the far side of the jaw. This, however, should not be so hard to accomplish if you have placed your landmarks, like the back corner of the mouth, at the correct depth in space and have drawn on the angle of the nasolabial fold correctly. However, it is worth noting that this happens, and if it happens to a lesser extent on your work, then you need to double check these points in space, and if they match well with your model, then it's a matter of having way too little volume and a turning of form that lacks fullness. Both should be fairly easy to spot, decide which one it is, and both should be fairly easy to fix. The third kind of form that we'll encounter is the purely internal form. So far we've dealt with the turning of form from contour to contour, the turning of form from contour to an internal endpoint, and now we must deal with the most ambiguous of them all, which is the turning of internal form. Let's take the fat pad that's part of the nasolabial fold as an example. First, we must place our form really well inside our contours, not only from one view, but from 2 views, the front and the side view. By doing so, we'll have our borders ready to go. Since we place our forms from the side views, we'll end up with a form that is likely lacking in gesture, or the correct angle from the front. Once the context of overall width comes into the picture, we can get the nasolabial fold drawn on well from all 4 views. Well, 2 views. Notice here that we have a clear angle break kind of in the middle of the form. This we can also observe easily because of a shift in value at this point. This tells us that the upper part of the nasolabial fold is facing the light more than this lower part. By drawing the form accurately, this will actually happen, more or less by default. By eventually placing the form at the proper width, this will happen by default. We can also observe this plane shift from the 3/4 view. In many ways, by drawing the form accurately from 4 views, we end up with the form turning well in this direction. Now let's call this the vertical turn since it runs from the top to the bottom. Let's advance on to the horizontal turn of the form, which will be from here to here. This is where I like relying a little bit more on light and shadow. I have established borders the form must turn within. I can tell by the light and shadow that we have a long flat light plane here and a short turn of form here. Now it's a matter of working within my carefully established borders and turning the form on my sculpture in a similar fashion. One longer flat plane here, and a quick turn of form from light to shadow here. If you were to make this turn happen too slowly, you will end up with a very different looking face, a much younger face. A turn that's too fast, and you'll end up with a very harsh and abrupt transition, which is kind of what we have already. Obviously, knowing how to interpret form helps, and knowing how a form tends to behave really helps. I know how most of the forms I'm going to encounter are going to behave, and so I have an expectation of what I will find. Because of this, I tend to find it a little bit faster, of course. Having both a visual memory to rely on, which comes from experience, combined with a little bit of knowledge of anatomy, will only serve to strengthen your visual memory and ability to represent forms accurately. Why does that little angle break happen inside the nasolabial fold, for example? Well, it happens because we have a muscle running from the cheekbone down towards the mouth. Knowledge of anatomy can really help you notice subtleties that you might otherwise miss. But there certainly is a way to have this be present in your work simply by carefully observing the shape and value of form. However, I think arming yourself with as many tools as you can in order to represent subtleties like this is going to be of tremendous value. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, consider liking it and subscribing to the channel for more videos. I put out a new video every Thursday, so stay tuned for next week. If you want to support the channel, watch the full 1-hour video, which this is an excerpt from, filled to the brim with instruction and in-detail descriptions of what is going on. Visit the link to my Patreon page in the description below the video to learn how. Until then, stay creative, and I hope to see you in the next one.